Jeff Gilbert, based in LA. I'm a feature film editor. Been doing it over 15 years. Got started writing and directing my own short films. Ended up going to grad school in New York, and fell in love with storytelling and the power of telling story through the edit. I've been doing it ever since.
I'm Connor Hall. I went to USC. I graduated about around 3 years ago and sort of stuck around LA and just been finding work in post. Really enjoy it. Love the technical side of stuff. I love the storytelling aspect through editing, just like Jeff said. Yeah.
Cool. And so you were from LA and went to New York, or you were New York, came out here?
I went to New York. I went to Tisch. I went to grad school at NYU.
Great.
And I lived in New York for about 10 years. I got my feet wet in non-scripted stuff. Did some indie features, but then made a move to LA about 10 years ago. So I'm based in LA.
So you did non-scripted stuff, which I'm familiar with as well. That transition into indie, was it concurrently, or did you kind of just say, you know what, no more of that stuff?
Yeah, the non-scripted stuff was kind of I was trying to write scripts and get things made as a writer-director. And I was fortunate enough to be able to work in the non-scripted world, which really honed my skills, but was never exactly what I wanted to be involved in. And then when I discovered verite documentary filmmaking, the synthesis became real, and I was able to sort of exercise the writerly instincts, as well as my love for editing all at once, and it really satisfied everything I was trying to do through writing and directing, which never really took off in its own right.
And so that, with your documentary and writing skills, obviously aid you a lot in this sort of documentary world, because, like you said, something from nothing is not easy. And so did that help guide you now where you're like, I can do anything?
Yeah, well, I'd like to think so. It doesn't feel that way at the start of any film.
Sure.
At the beginning of every film, I feel like I don't think I can do this. But I think just the writing was probably the greatest influence in terms of like what translates into how I approach footage now.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of working in non-scripted, was more just a comfort level with what to look for in material, and trying to see what you can do to have the material do more than what it's doing on its face value. So it was a synthesis of all those.
And so you went to USC. Did you graduate school or undergrad?
Undergrad. Yeah.
And were you in filmmaking or editing specifically?
I actually pursued producing in school. I took a lot of color classes though, and post always sort of like, I was attracted to the sort of computer science side of it, and then it was an interesting thing to me. And then once I graduated, I sort of fell into editing industrial videos for USC. I cut stuff for their graduate program for their business school, and that translated to some digital stuff. And then through a friend I made at SC, I met Jeff, and sort of had a great time. He asked if I wanted to jump onto Boise State, and that's sort of what I've been doing since I graduated.
Wow, now you're at Sundance, which is obviously
it's
awesome.
Been a great first experience.
So when it premiered, I mean, how was that for you? Obviously, you've seen it at Sundance. What the hell are we doing?
It was so strange. I mean, I keep telling Jeff, it's like we were working remotely from one another too. So I was working from my apartment, and this thing that I've been staring at in my bedroom for, a year, and like the raw footage has just been sort of sitting on some hard drives in my closet. And all of a sudden we're here, and there's, 200 people in the audience, and everyone's clapping and stuff. And I'm just like, where did this come from? This is insane.
It makes it real. Like, there's people that like this too. That's
it.
Awesome.
Definitely was like a justification for what we were doing, because I was just like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like not in a bad way. It's just
sure.
Like,
no, I get it.
Not really understanding the full reasoning behind it. Like, this will probably go on Netflix and stuff, but like actually understanding, this is what it means to have people view your work.
Mm-hmm. You guys worked remotely, which is interesting, and you're in Adobe Premiere.
We were.
Okay. And so when you were editing, was it like you would obviously you had duplicate media. Would you just email projects back and forth, or up, Google Drive?
It just depended on the situation. Mm-hmm. So if Jeff wanted me to pull scenes or pull B-roll or cut scenes, or just like sort of take a dive into sort of a exploratory thing, that was pretty easy. We had matching projects, and I would cut my scene or whatever, and then create a transfer project. send it over to him. We dragged the sequence in, and it was set up to where it usually it was a pretty simple, just drag and drop, and things worked. Some of the bigger asks, like if I needed to do a sound mix for the first half of the film, or do some sort of like color work or whatever you might want. That was a little bit different. It was a little bit harder to just drag and drop the full sequences of the film. So I'd sort of work staggered hours, sort of start late and get up early and just sort of make sure it was ready for Jeff by the time he got in.
So you got the footage. You prepped it, I presume?
No, we actually received it. It was already strung out to a pretty big rough cut.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. What was it, 6 hours or whatever it was?
Yeah.
So you received a rough cut?
We came on a couple months after another editorial team had started.
Sure.
Then we came in and took over the project. So we were inheriting all the prep work. The software itself was,
Sure.
So the premiere decision was made by another team. Which is interesting because I had never cut a feature on Premiere.
Interesting.
And I had cut some short work on it years past, but I didn't remember it.
So what'd you use? What are you...
Normally?
Yeah, sure.
Media Composer.
In the end, when you're delivering this feature, you're done. Are you doing any color, or is this maybe temp color or temp sound mix, effects and all that? Are you both working on that at the same time?
I like to build with sound.
Okay.
So I like to build an environment and feel, make the moment as lived in as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I like bringing those things into the mix, not the literal mix. So I like just to bring it onto my timeline. There are times where I can throw something over to Connor. He's really helpful to just sort of like smooth things out, or like give a cut more attention to a mix. But I take pride in handing over a mix that has a lot of components.
I presume you're done. Are you done before he gets it before he got it to prep it, get it to online color, or are you still doing
Yeah, no, I'm around. We now we're working together on a new project, and
cool.
we have adjoining offices. So
great.
So I'm around. I'll still come in and sign off on things. And I guess I'd move into more of a consultant role.
Mm-hmm.
But the heavy lifting certainly being done by Connor and the partners that we're collaborating with.
What I ended up doing was I reconnected and resolved.
Cool.
Did a complete transfer to Resolve.
Oh, you did before it went to...
Yeah, before we went to color, I did a complete online.
Cool.
For our specific case, it made sense because our DP was working remotely, and he wanted to do sort of, we shot at a wider frame, so he wanted to do some sort of aspect ratio changes, or not aspect ratio, but sizing changes and stuff. And then I sent the color guys a just sort of scrubbed version. It was just the straight timeline, and then they did the color, and then I was able to take the project the DP gave me and reconnect to the color file that was the exact same amount of frames. Everything lined up perfectly. And so it just went from being flat to colored.
So did you do a flat QuickTime or whatever to Resolve, or did you do an XML out of Premiere?
I didn't.
Like the raw media is basically what I'm saying. Which
Actually,
sounds like
normally I would have done the XML. I would have done a full online for it, just because I think it yields better results to transcode as little as possible, even if it is just like 444. I just sort of kind of a thing that I try to live by. But in this case, I did a flat render because I was going to be receiving a flat render from the color house. So I needed to be able to reference a flat render and not have to try to somehow place all these cuts and copy and paste the sizing information, especially with Torsten, who received a similar situation as the color house would have gotten. I sent him an H.264 that was fairly high quality that he was able to play around with.
If you could give one of you give a synopsis.
Boys State is a political coming-of-age story about these 4 young men who go through a mock government exercise known as Boys State. But it really becomes a journey that explores a lot of interesting themes like masculinity, integrity, and these really inspiring young men finding their own political voice, and grappling with what it means to have power and what sort of decisions you make when you have that responsibility. I think I was inspired by the kids more than seeing myself in any of the interactions. I think they sort of, whatever side of the political spectrum they're on, because it differs, and certainly some of them differ from my own. What I really admire about the program and the film and what these boys do is that they're forced to come together to talk. And in an era right now where people are just sort of setting up camp and not connecting at all, this civil discourse that's created through the program is critical. So I take inspiration from that, and I think that's sort of the lesson that carries forward is to don't just be content, in your political leanings, challenge them, and put yourself in a position to listen to the other side, and it may open you up, it may not.
How did you, when you watched it or watched the raw footage and saw the kids, did it open your eyes to the same?
Oh, I think in an incredible way, and just in a less cerebral sense than what Jeff was bringing up. Like, I grew up in a very conservative part of the country, and just going to USC and moving out to California and sort of having my mind expanded in certain ways, just learning to be very open-minded and try to like listen to both sides of things. Seeing that in Boys State, I mean, that is the thematic sort of through line of the whole film, and like seeing it in the footage and everything, it was just like drawn to it. I think it definitely made me think of my own experiences in an interesting new light, I think.
What do you say to people that are like, do I need to go to film school or can I learn off YouTube, which I do, off a 13-year-old kid teaching me After Effects? What are your thoughts on, besides...
Well, so I went to the grad program. And when I went, YouTube was not around. So, sure, you can learn anything off of YouTube, right? I feel like the value of my education, while it may not equal the cost, the value is in being surrounded by creative, smart peers who go on to be not only friends, but colleagues for life. And to have a circle of people who you respect and learn from, I think that's a really enriching experience. I think the question of value is an entirely different conversation. But for me, I grew a tremendous amount and sort of was safe to find my voice and my passion, my interest within that environment. So it was valuable for me. That's another thing. Like film school wasn't a place where I felt like I had to learn software or something. Yes, and we were editing on film using flatbeds, and I was there as a part of the director's program. So learning how to shoot on film, like the technical component was required, but that was sort of like the 100 level stuff. It was more than just having to make it, and being within a world and a structure that's giving you deadlines and forcing you to produce something and make it. You can watch YouTube, but it's not so easy to just go out and make it. When there's a structure and there are expectations and people putting, exercises in front of you to do it. Like, there's no substitute for that. It's the difference between like signing up for a gym and being like, I should go to the gym, or like signing up for a gym that has a trainer and your trainer's like, okay, you need to be here and you get held accountable, and you sort of have a regimen. So
I think if I had it all over to do over again, I would 100% go back to film school, because the connections I made, there's a reason I'm sitting on this couch, and it's all because of the school I went to. And I think the things I learned there were not technical, like the technical stuff came later, and came on my own sort of pursuit of knowledge. But the sort of open-mindedness that came from going to school somewhere else, which I think you don't necessarily need to get a film degree. I think you can hang out with the kids at the film school, and get a degree in something completely different. That's where the real value came for me.